Welcome to another episode of Don't Waste the Chaos. I'm your host, Kerri Roberts. I always get excited to have guests on the show, but I've got to admit today I'm pretty pumped. I'm joined by a guy who is innovative, an excellent accountability partner, kind, very resourceful, a great girl dad, and has become a dear friend of mine over the past 5 years. He's just a very interesting guy, and I think you'll find a ton of value in today's episode. George Zimny is a Columbia, Missouri native, and as a fun fact, was raised in a 1920s farmhouse. He has always been attracted to entrepreneurship, from scaling a national wellness company to growing his own insurance practice to recently launching a business in the recruitment space. He is a devoted husband to Stephanie and a proud father of 2 beautiful daughters, one of which I would organize an arranged marriage to my son if that was still a thing. He also shares a love for music, favoring Coldplay and Taylor Swift, influenced by his role as a girl dad. His diverse interests span organic cooking, Ironman triathlons, scouting, travel, and sports. He holds a BSBA from the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and spent some time in Australia during college. Professionally, George started a 10-office insurance practice, successfully exiting after 12 years of growth. From there, he invested in the top Forbes-ranked global executive search firm. It's called Into Growth, serving over 60 locations globally, currently serving as a member of their board of directors. 12 months ago, George and his business partner, Ryan, launched a talent acquisition firm called ProducifyX. And after 4 months of testing this innovative concept in the market, they acquired their first client, partnering with a small and local real estate firm. Since then, they have secured partnerships with over 75 offices across industries like insurance, financial services, real estate, hospitality, legal, and senior care. ProducifyX focuses on helping companies attract and screen talent at the top of the recruitment funnel, therefore complementing the business's existing HR recruitment function. ProducifyX operates to complement recruiting teams, not replace them. Therefore, they charge a fraction of the price of that traditional staffing firm. And if you've listened to the pod in the past, you've probably heard me run a sponsor role for this business because I'm a personal believer. I've recommended their services to several of my clients as it's a huge value add and delivers meaningful results. Overall, George loves relationships, new challenges, and living life to its fullest. I'm blessed to have him in my regular text list, and you're in for a treat today. So George, let's jump in and give the people what they came here for. Welcome to the pod.
Awesome, Kerri. It's been many months coming, but it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So I mentioned a ton of ventures you've played critical roles in. Let's start in the human realm, since that's my favorite. So what inspired you to start a recruitment firm specializing in talent acquisition strategies?
Yeah, so going back to my roots, I graduated college, played a pretty pivotal role in a startup company for 3 years, but I was employed. And after 3 years, I hit a ceiling pretty quickly with how far I could go. It was a blessing in disguise. I thought by my 3rd year, you get a sense that you feel stuck. I know you've shared similar experience in the past. And so I decided after 3 years in corporate America with a company locally here in Columbia, Missouri, that it was time to go the entrepreneurial route. And I started my own insurance practice. I was the first full-time representative in the state of Missouri. And I'm not going to hide anything. I literally went door to door, business to business, selling supplemental insurance. It was a phenomenal product. It helped people. It was farm to farm. It was a very personal, relationship driven, human to human type of interaction, very transactional. And I had a lot of success with that. I helped a lot of people. I still have clients to this day now, 15 years later, that call me and say, hey, my brother was diagnosed with cancer. My mom's going through something. And this company that I represented pays them lots of money, similar to an Aflac type of concept.
Okay.
So I was really passionate about what I was doing there. And I realized, hey, if this guy, myself, that didn't come from an entrepreneurial background, I had no experience in the insurance or financial services sector, if I could have success with this in very short order, maybe other people could as well. So I started recruiting people, helping them get licensed, getting in the field, training them, and getting them productive and blessing their life in a way, giving them a career vehicle that they could really own the outcome of, similar to what my passion points were whenever I came in. Fast forward 12 years later, ended up expanding across a 10-office market, had hundreds of people in the organization. And my role became, besides business owner, wearing all the hats that an entrepreneur and a business owner wears now with a much scaled business, my role for growth and the biggest growth lever was attraction of talent, so recruitment and hiring. And so that's really organically how I got into the recruiting space. I sold that business 4 or 5 years ago, had a good exit from that. I had some transition time to figure out what the next business was going to be, and that business became ProducifyX. But different from, I think, traditional staffing firms, I came into the space in the recruitment realm from the lens of a business owner operator that was recruiting for my own business. And that's so recruitment, talent attraction, connecting people's mission, a candidate's mission with the mission of a company and trying to find alignment there is very challenging for most businesses, but it's so critical. It's so important. It's just something I'm passionate about.
Yeah, and you're so right. Usually that's done off the corner of the desk. They need it, but they don't really know what to do or how to do it strategically. And so, yeah, huge value add. I love that. So how do you ensure your firm stays competitive in this ever evolving recruitment industry?
Yeah, well, so we're 12 months in business. So if you asked us what we are, I'm still going to say what we were yesterday is a little bit different than what we are today. I feel like my business partner, Ryan Drysdale, and I almost weekly say, man, do you remember 12 months ago when we thought that our clients wanted X and now they're asking for Y or we're delivering Y? And I mean, every facet of our business has changed over the last 12 months, which is so exciting, sometimes a little bit daunting, but we're very agile and our mission is to bring value to a client, but we still don't know what that greatest value is, right? So for today, our service offering is what it is, but we're making pivots almost daily. So it's just a constantly ever evolving landscape. Artificial intelligence. I mean, I'm not going to beat a dead horse, and I'm not the tech guru that I'm sure you're going to interview a lot of people on artificial intelligence and how that's impacting HR and that whole division of business. But based on what I know a couple things with, I think, pretty strong certainty. Number one is I've never met a client that didn't desire more quality candidates at the top of the funnel. Right? More quality people to consider interviewing. And so that's one thing that I know with certainty. And that's why I think we've been relevant across a multitude of industry segments. And as far as today goes, we're approaching our service offering from a generalist perspective. And so there's not really from an industry generalist perspective. It's been really interesting learning from people. I think that one thing Ryan and I do really well is we're really eager to learn. We listen well, and we want to make sure that we're continuously adding value. So I'm not the industry expert on HR. That's definitely your realm. But I do know for a fact that there's a whole lot of companies out there that wish that they had more people that were pre-qualified, ready to interview. And they could just take them on and then narrow down that search to that right person to fill the chair and fill the position.
Yeah. And I would say to that point, no, that's not the realm I want to live in. And it's interesting to me when you've got an HR pro, regardless of how many years they've been doing it, even though I've got pretty good breadth and depth across the field after over 20 years, it's still important for all of us to say, but what's the highest and best use of my time? And then also, what am I delivering at the highest value to a client? And so that's why early on, when I was talking to you about my business and you were talking to me about your business, I'm like, let's connect, because I don't like own that piece. I don't want to. I want to bring somebody to the table. And I think a lot of times, and I know we're going to get more into your business journey and why things have succeeded for you, and I'm assuming we'll talk about this a little bit, but when we try to grab up everything, then we're giving mediocre value to our clients. And honestly, I think sometimes that's because of a lack of confidence in ourselves. We just say yes to everything because we're hoping we can make some money that way. And maybe we're worried that we might not, if we niche out, we might not be able to get as many clients in that. And so I think the longer I'm doing this, and we've been doing it for a really similar amount of time, the more refined my offer gets. And now I have a better idea 12 months in, but I'm sure another 12 months, it'll be even better to where I know this is the type of client I'm looking for, and this is the value I can bring them. And it makes it easier for me to say no or yes. And then I can feel ultra confident for what I bring to the table. So I love that you all are like, this is the lane, but we're listening, because ultimately we just want to bring value in this space at a high level.
Well, I think it's a tough, at some point, a small business. I mean, for anybody listening that's an entrepreneur that's starting their own thing, especially when there's not a proof of concept in the market, like our little sliver of our little niche isn't really something that's common in the staffing world, because we're not a staffing company. We're not in,
Right.
you don't hire us, and it's not an end-to-end recruiting process. So we didn't really know if what we were going to offer was going to be well received by clients and in the marketplace. So I think for anybody that's a startup, like, you just have to, I mean, you hate to say fake it till you make it, but you do have to put some things out there that you're uncertain of, deliver to the best of your ability, and then make the proper pivots. But I do see that there's so many companies, especially startups out there in the market, that they do try to be everything to everybody. And I think that's okay for a very short period of time, a small season in your entrepreneurial journey or your business offering. But if you don't make pivots to really hone in on what your greatest value is, you're probably not going to be in business long. And if you are in business long, you're probably not doing things the right way, because there's probably somebody else. You just can't be everything to everybody. And that's a reality thing in your business. Like, respectfully, you've probably you've told me you've turned clients down, and you've steered clients in the direction of somebody that can offer something that you're just not honed in on being the best at. Yeah. And I respect the heck out of that. I think that's how all businesses should evolve, and how all businesses should operate after they get through that initial phase of getting some identity of who am I and what am I bringing, right?
Yeah. I also think it's got a smidge of scarcity versus abundance in there too, because there's some people that I noticed that are maybe like in the coaching space or maybe in the consulting space. And I've seen some of them feel competitive with me, which makes me laugh. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way, but anybody who's listened to my podcast for any amount of time, whether this is your first episode or not, or has known me personally, I'm a unique flavor, and I love being that way. I love letting my quirky personality show up every day. It brings me a ton of life, and it helps me sleep well at night. And so when I see people competing or feeling awkward or maybe detaching because we have similar businesses, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much business to go along. And I also know that I am not going to want to work with every client, and they are not all going to want to work with me. It's not the right fit. And so I would rather, whenever I hear somebody relatively in the space, whether it's HR or a potential referring partner or whatever, I'm like, tell me all about it. Tell me all about what you're doing, because I guarantee you, we don't have the same train of thought. So why wouldn't we just figure out what you're passionate about, what I'm passionate about, and then how we can interchange? Because really, that's serving the client. That's true consultation. And plus, I'm trying to build a firm. I'm not just living out here by myself. I'm trying to build a business for not just me. It's not just a lifestyle business for myself, just like you. You like to grow and scale and then see if it's something that continues to be of value, or maybe you need to sell that and do something again. So when you're a true entrepreneur, I feel like you hold it because it's your baby, but you're also like holding it to let it blossom, whatever that looks like. It's a different approach that I think not everybody has.
I agree. And I think one more thing on that is, why in business don't people start with a relationship first and then talk about the business stuff? Because at the end of the day, that's something that attracted us to just really alignment on the business side, was we aligned on values first, right? Mm-hmm. I don't mean that you have to go super deep into if you're trying to bring on a new client, but something that Ryan and I, we did in our insurance company was we always started with a human connection first. And then we talked about the business stuff, the transactional stuff second. And we've maintained that philosophy going into this business and our prior business and every business we've ever operated together. We've maintained that. And it makes it more fun. B, it makes it more meaningful. But C, the relationships that we have with our clients are so much deeper. And guess what follows? Better transactions as well.
The longevity of contracts and all of that. Yes. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about your successful businesses. So what do you think are the key factors that have contributed to your success in launching multiple businesses over the years?
Oh, man. So I think for me, in my experience, just a deep desire, a burning kind of will to win. Not beat other people, but just continue going when things are tough. When I started my insurance company in 2009, so for anybody that was in business post-recession, it was not a good time to be in the financial services world. And I had a lot of people tell me, a lot of peers and a lot of mentors tell me, like, hey, you should not start an insurance company as the first representative representing the product line you're representing in the state of Missouri. A, you shouldn't be in the industry. B, there are no clients, there's no testimonies, there's no credibility in your state, and there's no guarantee that you're going to have success. And it's the worst, time in the history of the economy that we've been alive. So you shouldn't do that. And I ran towards the fire, right? I was just like, oh man, okay. So they say don't do it. That's a challenge. That's exciting. I think I want to do that. It's the same reason I did an Ironman around the COVID era. It's just because everything's shutting down. So I'm like, I'm going to get out. I'm not going to be reckless, but I'm going to get out and do something that's really hard because I know that there's so much positive and so much growth at the end of that tunnel. So I had a really successful insurance career and ended up helping a lot of clients and helping hundreds of representatives because I took that leap of faith in myself to get out there and do it. So I think just like sticking to it, the grit, the will to win. I think number two is I've learned the hard way that I don't know everything. In the prime of my insurance career, objectively from a financial standpoint, when things were rocking and rolling, we're doing millions of revenue a year from startup to what I thought was success. We had 10 offices open. We're recruiting, Kerri, like our best year, like somewhere between 130 and 140 new producing representatives a year. I had a staff of 42 people. That for me, that was a big business relative to many others. It's very small, but at the time, I thought I was on top of the world. No one can take me down. And then COVID hit. And boom, humility sunk in. I mean, I didn't have a choice. I was humbled immediately. I thought I was the king of the world. No one could take me down. And the world said differently. So it's just, you can tell people about every successful entrepreneur on the planet. Phil Knight wrote the book Shoe Dog. And it took the guy 20 years to make $1. I mean, he had the government bringing him down in the US. He was battling manufacturing challenges in China, and his plants and factories were taken over. It took him 20 years to make any money. Read the book. It's phenomenal if you haven't. But everybody has those experiences where you just think that things are going as good as they can. So, I mean, one of the phrases that I live by is it's never as good as it seems. And it's really usually never as bad as it seems. So from a business entrepreneurial standpoint, I think that's something that I've learned the hard way is just try to keep it even keel. Don't get too excited about the wins. Celebrate them. Don't get too down by the losses or the challenges or roadblocks, but just keep plugging forward. And then also know when you need to exit. That's something that I've learned over the years now having a few businesses is people shouldn't stay. I think too many entrepreneurs stay the course too long. And so you need to know when to exit. So grit, know when to exit. Don't get too high. Don't get too low. Yeah. I mean, those are the first things that come to mind for me.
No, that's really good. And I actually was just having lunch with my mom, dad, and brother. And my brother was saying, which my brother is 45 years old. So he's young. I say, since I'm 42, I say 45 is young. And he said yesterday he was with his company. It was his 27th anniversary.
Wow.
Because he joined them when he was 18 years old. And I was like, I can't believe, it pulled me up on LinkedIn. I've moved positions on average 4 years. It's probably actually less than that, which my family's always given me a ton of crap about. But I was like, well, lucky for you, you've had all these different opportunities within the same company. He was a laborer and now he's like a superintendent vice president. So he's been able to grow and evolve. And my mom started laughing and said, yeah, remember when you told me to quit? And I was like, yeah, because you were being grumpy. Like you were being hard to work with. And she called and she was complaining one day and she was 65 though. And she said, I'm not learning this new system. And I said, I've got some employees like you and you suck to work around. I'm telling you. They're talking about you. They're tired of it. You should just retire before everyone is totally mad at you and we'll just all eat cake together. And she was like, you're right. I'm going to leave. And that is huge. Knowing when to say when. It doesn't make you a quitter. I feel sometimes we've said, oh, you're a quitter or you're not committed or whatever. But I'm not saying quit and do nothing. Quit and find something else, grow something else, whatever that is. So that's really good feedback. And I wrote down, it's never as good as it seems, and it's never as bad as it seems. I wrote that down. That's good. And I will link the Shoe Dog book in the show notes as well. That's helpful.
Nice.
Okay. So how do you manage and balance the demands of running several businesses simultaneously when maybe you're at one and you're trying to lift up another one, or you're trying to wrap one up and start another? What's that look like for you?
That's a good question. Do you have any ideas?
Work yourself to death.
Yeah, right. How do you be? I mean, my daughters are what I live for. What my wife Steph and I live for. It's giving them a great life, modeling Success is only relevant to like what you're becoming and the people that you're influencing, I believe. So everything is really for them. So that's important. Like my daughters are, and my wife and my family and my mom and my dad and my brother. And I mean, overall, my family is the most important thing to me. So I think I've chosen to get off the road quite a bit. And so I manage most of my time from my home office, which is where I'm sitting right now. And I have 3 different calendars, nothing flashy, but I time block. So I block off 2 hours at a time, 1 hour at a time, whatever's necessary. And then I do my best to prioritize to be like between us and the audience. I think prioritizing is really challenging to actually create priorities and stick to them. But I think that trying to prioritize and giving it your best go is better than just going by the seat of going with the wind, as they say, a kite in the wind. You don't really know where it's going to go. You want to give your future, your success, your business some direction. And I think that using a calendar system and prioritizing is important. Another book that I really appreciate is The One Thing by Gary Keller.
Yeah.
And I mean, that just talks about, I can't align to finding just one thing, but I think the book's not about one. It talks about one, but I think it's about honing in on the most important tasks. And right now, the most important task with my current business is twofold: generating new revenue. So that's through client attraction and delivering great outcomes to clients. Everything else can come secondary. So I try to move the secondary things to the later part of the week, the weekends, or when my daughters are in bed, right? And I think that because my highest priority is my family and taking care of them and showing and modeling progress and giving them a great life, or doing my best to, I think because that's my highest priority, it makes the business priorities really important, right? So I think really I've found that bringing all my priorities, both the business and the personal, together and making it one life and not like these separate lives, like a traditional 9 to 5. If you have the opportunity, and I'm sure most people are in traditional corporate jobs, which is amazing. By the way, side note, I'm just bouncing around here, but Kerri, I don't think that everybody should be an entrepreneur.
Oh, couldn't agree more. It's not for everybody, that's for sure.
Not for everybody, right? And there's a lot of people that should come out of college or not go to college or whatever their life path is, but they should work in a corporate role, learn finance, learn business development, learn marketing, and lay a foundation of knowledge so that they don't start their own business someday and just fail because they have to also learn those things that it takes to run a business, learn those fundamental characteristics of success in the business corporate world, and then go launch something. There's other people that, like myself, would get stir crazy sitting in a desk in front of a computer working for a company all day. And it was right for me to pursue entrepreneurship sooner. So it is hard to balance everything, but I think when your priorities are in order, you seek out the right information, you seek out the right software to help you prioritize and help you be efficient. And then it's just about discipline and execution.
Yeah, I agree. And to that point on not everybody is made for this. I say now, like I was made to be an entrepreneur. It's so obvious to me now. But oh my gosh, if I wouldn't have done 20 plus years in other people's businesses and used their businesses as my playground, I would be flailing right now. There is a brief stint where I was in insurance and I was a COO, but I found myself as a chief marketing officer during that time because of the marketing efforts that I had done for my agency, and we sold. And so the new agencies we were part of wanted to mimic my marketing. If I wouldn't have had that, and that was a wild time in my life, very confusing. I wasn't really sure. I was carrying a dual appointment. It was challenging. I didn't know where it was going. I didn't know how long I was going to be able to maintain that. It sounded daunting because it was. And if I wouldn't have done that very awkward stage, then I would have been so ill prepared. I'm using marketing so much now. And it's probably the thing I get complimented on the most right now, or people ask me about it just as much or more than human resources stuff, which is funny. So I'm so thankful for all of my years in corporate. And yeah, it ate my lunch some days too, which is why I ended up being an entrepreneur. But if I wouldn't have had that time and that space to work inside of other people's businesses, like I would not have been ready for this in any way, shape, or form. And it would have been a lot messier and probably a lot less productive. And I wouldn't have made any money my first year.
Yeah, knowing your corporate path and the companies you worked with and the type of tasks that you had to work through and the challenges that you worked through, totally set you up for success as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it was a must.
Otherwise, if you can, I mean, coming into the HR, operations, marketing, consultancy space, what would you offer people year one?
Yes, couldn't agree more. Yeah, when I see young people starting out in the consultant space, I'm like, I get it. You're well-read or researched or educated, but the whole value of my business is the last 20 years that I spent in corporate.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Like,
how about the executive coaches nowadays that have never run a business or
that's painful.
Been an executive?
Yeah, it's painful. It's painful to watch. I try to cheer them on and not be frustrated with them, but the reality of it is, I think it's irresponsible.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yep.
To offer experience or expertise in an area that you don't have experience or expertise in. Yeah, painful to watch. Okay, here's something that you are, I would say, at least 50% better than me, if not 75% better. Let's talk about networking. Networking is so painful to me, and I've shared this with you, but your approach to networking is completely different than the way I ever looked at it. How do you ensure that your networking is intentional and effective for your business goals?
Yeah. Great.
And how'd you get comfortable with it, honestly?
So it is my biggest regret professionally that I didn't start networking intentionally in my early 20s. So even before that, in hindsight, I think that I could have advanced my career, my impact, everything over the last 20 years in business, probably tenfold, had I started intentionally reaching out and getting coffee and having chats and just getting uncomfortable and getting in front of people of influence when I was in college. Can you imagine? Okay, so why do people pursue postgraduate degrees at the Ivy League schools? They learn great stuff, right? This is my thought on it. They learn a lot. The education's great. It's definitely advanced. But the thing that I see from Ivy League grads isn't that they're just hyper smart. They are hyper smart just to get into that school. But they come out of that with relationships with people that are doing significant things, so far more significant than the average MBA program out there at your average school or the online programs.
Gosh, that's so true.
Who you build a relationship with. It's not just about knowing people. It's not a social network, right? Oh, I've got 3,000 or kudos, you have 10,000 or 20,000 followers on LinkedIn. That's great. But how many of those people could you pick up the phone, call their cell phone and ask a favor, seek advice, ask for an investment in a new company, a startup? That's what really matters. And so how you get comfortable with it is you're intentional about it. It's just like anything else. I think networking is no different than fitness and exercise. It's no different than reading, right? Beginning of the year, most people set a goal. I want to read 12 books, one a month. Cool. Then buy the books. Now you're invested in it. Cool. Then lay out the books and track your reading and your progress. This book has 200 pages. I got 30 days. I got to read X number a day, and I'm going to take weekends off or whatever your system is. And then at the end of the year, you read 12 books. Networking's no different. Cool. We all have access to people and their contact info. Just get on LinkedIn. You can search anybody on the entire planet that's in business, and you can send them a direct message right now. Find people of influence that have something that you want or that you want to become, or they have knowledge that you want to gain, or they are going to potentially help lead to the next evolution of your business in some capacity, whatever it is. Find those people, reach out to them authentically, and then set a goal at the beginning of the year, set a goal today that, hey, I want to have coffee or virtual coffee with one person in a month that is 10x where I am or 2x where I am or has something that I desire to become or have or learn, and then make it happen. It's as simple as that. How do you lose 20 pounds and replace 20 pounds of fat with muscle? Well, figure out a plan, right? Research your plan, set your plan in motion, track it, put it in the calendar, get accountability partners. Networking is no different, but it is so powerful. It's so much more than just who your success is a derivative of who it's not. Your success is a derivative of the depth of the relationship with those people. But you have to be intentional. People aren't just going to seek you out. Very rarely, especially for a startup environment or somebody who doesn't come from a well-known politician or professional athlete or somebody of status, right? Or quote unquote, right? They're known in the media or something like that. If you're normal Joe like George and Kerri, and you're having to earn your stripes every single day, you have to be intentional about networking as well.
That's so true. A couple of weeks ago, a guy that I went to high school with, I have not seen or heard from him since high school, and he's a couple of years older than me. So it's probably been 25 years since we have communicated at all. And even in high school, we didn't really know each other that well. He reached out to me and he's, hey, we're both in the HR space. I live in Quincy, Illinois. Looks like you relocated to back home. Like, you're almost an hour away. Do you want to come to this event? My company's hosting it. And I was like, no, I'm working on the no, right? Like, my first instinct is no. And so I was like, oh, thanks for letting me know. Well, like a week later, he was like, hey, would you like to come to this event for free? I can get you a ticket. I'll put your name badge up at the front. Would you like to attend? And as soon as he said that, I was like, yes, that he's making some effort. I don't really understand what this event is. I looked through the agenda and I was like, there's always something to learn, right? Merck was speaking at it, a published author that really challenges insurance status quo and transparency and pricing was speaking at it. And I was like, this is interesting stuff to me. So I'm going to go, but it's focused on HR people. That's not really my target market. Companies that already have HR people, but I was like, I'm going to go because that was really kind of him. Do you know, at the end of the event, he was like, hey, would you like to speak at this sometime? It's really what I wanted to ask you, but I hadn't seen you in so long. And I was like, yes, I would like to speak at this sometime because that is what I would like to do. You know what I mean? So I'm so glad I drove over there. And I was thinking like, I'm going to step out at every break. And no, I kept my laptop in my bag. I talked to other people in the room, met some people from some facilities, but I hate to say I haven't done anything like that since I moved out here on the farm. And it reminded me, like when I was driving home that day, I was like, that was a good little shot in the arm, a good little reminder to get out there. First of all, because people are just interesting. Like,
Sure.
I learned a ton that day about all kinds of different stuff, not to mention I met a woman who works for a company that they had sold and I didn't know that. And it was a company that rehabbed my knee when I injured it in college basketball. And I was like, oh, that's interesting to know. I wonder why they sold and how big that company is. And could I interact with that company in some way? Like, your mind starts moving in different ways than it does when you're sitting at your home office. So you've always been excellent at that. And I will say, you're really one of the only few people who have ever been like, are you meeting with people? Like, how many?
Yeah.
Is it on your calendar? Are you reaching out? That was challenging to me when I first launched the business because that's very uncomfortable for me. I'm an introvert. I can make a million excuses, but the reality of it is it moves the needle.
Yeah. Well, and first off, kudos to you on just showing up, because there were people of influence there. And it sounds like this individual that invited you was a person of influence there's something good that comes from that. And usually you're going to help them before they help you, right? In some capacity. You may speak at that event for free, or maybe they pay you. I have no idea. But if you help those people, that will always come back, or at least that's been my experience, right? And if you do it authentically, and that's the thing, I think people take the wrong approach with networking. It's so uncomfortable. For some reason, it's so uncomfortable to start a conversation with a stranger and just try to get to know them as a human, right? What are they passionate about outside of the work stuff? Who are these people, right? Because naturally, we want every conversation to start with the business stuff. It's just known, it's easy, it gets your agenda out there. An unknown agenda starts off potentially uncomfortable in a conversation. But when you're networking, in my definition of it, Kerri, I don't think networking is about trying to get to know somebody so you can get something out of them. I think the best form of networking is being your genuine, authentic self and having a truly organic conversation without an agenda, without an intention, or with minimal intention of what next steps are, where it goes from there, or what you can get out of that person. And you just want to get to know them. You know that they're impactful, they're successful. You just want to get to know them, and you trust and accept that the process of building that relationship done over and over again will yield great outcomes for their life and for your life. And that's been my experience, especially the last 5 years, ever since I've been intentional about networking. Quick example, 3 years ago, sent a cold email to a CEO of a 100-plus-year-old insurance company out here in the Midwest, and just wanted to get to know the CEO. He just looked really interesting. And he, just by reading the profile on LinkedIn and getting to know what reading a couple of blogs of his and things like that. Just somebody that you just want to know, right? Somebody that I felt like I could have coffee with and we'd have a good connection. Well, we had a good connection. He ends up inviting me to lunch, which is about a 2-3 hour drive away. So I made that drive. So this guy's running a multi-billion-dollar company, right? He carves out over 3 hours for one-on-one lunch with his cell phone put away. I mean, it's just like unheard of. And this guy's been in business forever. Has thousands of employees that look up to him. And I never asked for a transaction, right? I had something I could have sold him, right? I had executive search services, advisory type services that we could have sold him, but we never did, right? We said, hey, if transactions are going to happen, they're going to organically unfold. And I know that not every business, you can't transit. You got to ask for the sale and things like that. But in this particular networking relationship, that's not what we did. And so about 6 months later, he invites myself and my business partner for another lunch. No transaction, didn't ask for it, furthered the relationship. Fast forward 2 years, that's now presently our very top, our number one client with ProducifyX. And guess who called who? They called us. No transaction, no ask. They called us and said, hey, we want to transact with you guys. I mean, it's just when you treat people well and you do it consistently, it's also a numbers game, right? Like you can't meet one person, network with one person and think, if you're a job seeker, Kerri, I don't know if any of your audience is looking for jobs or will ever be in the market for a new job. I had a buddy out of Florida, good friend of mine, one of my first insurance agents I hired back in probably 2010. And his mom was a client. And I asked her on the way out, I said, hey, do you know anybody that's looking for a new career? And she said, well, my son, I think, could do what you do. I ended up hiring her son. Phenomenal family, phenomenal individual. He's gone on to be basically a regional executive with a couple of very reputable insurance companies. He calls me the other day and he says, hey, George, I want to get your advice. I know you're well connected in the insurance space. I'm not sure if I want to stay with my current company. Do you have any opportunities that you know of that I could apply for? And I basically told him, I said, hey, you can apply all over the place. But I'd say the best thing you can do is start to build relationships with the insurance CEOs that you want to be a part of and reach out directly to the CEO and ask them for coffee. And I said, I guarantee you CEOs of huge companies will take your call because nobody else is that proactive. Nobody else is doing it that way and really trying to build a relationship. And that's what he's doing now. He's reaching out. He's trying to get virtual coffee with a CEO every single week. I guarantee you that guy lands in an incredible position because of his proactive, intentional approach at networking.
Yeah, which then in his confidence in that process is going to make him even more successful as a salesperson in that realm later. You know what I mean? And he will have all these relationships. And yes, I totally agree. Okay. Let's talk about I'm not going to say it's the most interesting part of you, but very intriguing. Let's go Ironman. Let's go health side. So what motivated you to participate in Ironman? You talked a little about COVID timeframe. How has it impacted your life?
It's been awesome. I got my first tattoo. It's my bib number.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's not the Ironman tattoo because I think eventually they'll change it to Iron Man and Iron Woman. And I think the branding will change someday. That's just my guess. But I didn't want someone else's company logo on my shoulder, but yeah, it was impactful enough to imprint myself with some ink. So I say Ironman was my COVID moment. Instead of doing other things that may be less productive, I just woke up one day and I have a very good friend in my neighborhood, my community, that both he and I came together one day and we're like, hey, let's do something really hard. And we just went to the top of the triathletic world and said, let's just do an Ironman. And we're like these hungry 40s athletes that just think like super ambitious. Oh yeah, Ironman, we could totally do it. Well, we did a sprint race in our neighborhood just as a trial, Kerri. And so it's a sprint is a 400 or so meter swim, let's say 20 or something back and forth in a pool. We just did in our local neighborhood pool. I think we did about a 15-mile bike ride and a 5K, so a 3.1 mile run. We didn't know what the swim technique was, so we were doing like all kinds of side stroke and backstroke, and we had no knowledge of how swimmers in these races swim. He didn't own a bike, so I lent him my wife's bike. That's another story. And then I had a mountain bike, big knobby tires. And then we both had run. I think he'd done a marathon once, and I've done a couple of marathons at that point. So we did this, and this is like maybe a tenth or something of the actual Ironman race. So we did the swim, we did the bike, we did the run. It was brutal. It was horrible. We were cramping. The swim was just atrocious. It was not pleasant whatsoever. The bike was fine, but we were on the Katy Trail, a gravel trail. So we get done with that and we're like, man, can we do a full Ironman? So an Ironman's 2.1 mile swim in open water. And then it transitions immediately into a 112 mile bike ride. And then it transitions into the completion of full marathon, 26.2 miles. And you start when the sun is rising, and most athletes finish, if they even finish, about 10% or so DNF, do not finish. But you finish when the sun has long set. And so it's not just an endurance race of physical stamina and strength, but it's a race of mental, emotional, your organs, everything is being tested to the maximum limits. Hydration, nutrition, salt intake, and minerals. I mean, all these things play components in why 1 out of 10 doesn't even finish the race. And then there's a whole percentage of people that don't finish within the qualification time. So I was fortunate enough to train for about 18 months for this one race, spent tens of thousands of dollars for this one race on this one day. The race happened to be in Sacramento. It was their inaugural Sacramento Ironman race. Ended up getting canceled at 5 a.m. on race day. So I shipped my bike down there, the whole deal. I had to learn what a road bike was, had to learn proper swim technique, had to learn how to put on goggles and wear a cap. And I mean, there's so much to it. So spent 18 months of my life to get to this race, and it's canceled. On race day, 50 mile an hour sideways winds. I mean, there's 3,000 people ready to jump in the American River that tees up into the Sacramento and do this crazy race. Canceled. There happened to be one more race I could get into in the Phoenix area. And so I was fortunate to get into that race. Beautiful.
How much later was that?
Maybe 2 or 3 weeks later.
Okay.
It's the last race of the US or the Ironman season, right? So I got in, I raced it. I finished in 13 hours and 50 minutes or something like that. On the run, my only goal on the run was not to walk. And if I ever do another one, I'll walk, right? There's a strategy. And especially as I age, my endurance is not going to improve likely, but I finished the race under time, beat my goal, and I cried a third of that entire jog. It was so painful, but my wife was jogging portions of it alongside me. Raylan and Adeline were cheering me on. I saw them probably a good 15 times throughout the race. It was just incredible. I can't wait to do it again. I'm going to wait for a little while. I'm not one of these Ironman athletes. I'll do one, and probably in a couple more years, I'll do another one. It's very time consuming. It's very rigorous on the body and very challenging emotionally as well. But I was also, my race partner and I were able to raise, this was 3 years ago, I think it was $40,000 or so for pediatric cancer research for a local organization called Rally for Ryan. And that just made it even sweeter. So it was, if you're looking for a spark in life, get out of a little slump, whatever your slump is, do something that's really hard. It's pretty cool what the personal kickback is.
How did you balance training for that with your professional and personal responsibilities? That's a lot.
Yeah, honestly, my business at that time, my insurance company did not have a good year. And 2 reasons, post-COVID and then full responsibility, my interests diverted elsewhere. There's an opportunity cost to everything, right? And that's why presently it would not be right by my family. It would not be right by my business partner. It wouldn't be right by you for me to go do another Ironman right now. Little sprint races here and there. You can train an hour every 2 days, every 3 days, a few hours a week. Totally. I'll do those all day long. I'll go run 13 miles tomorrow if I feel crappy today, just to get out of my funk. But to train properly to finish an Ironman, because I'm not training year round as an Ironman athlete like some of these amazing men and women do, it just wouldn't be fair to my other higher priorities. So, but I wouldn't, even though my business had some challenges because I wasn't as engaged as the leader of the business, I wouldn't take that experience back. I learned so much through that.
Yeah. Speaking of learning, what have you taken from that time, that training, the actual race day, all of that, and how have you applied it to your business?
Ooh, Gosh, okay. You might stump me on that one.
I mean, I can think of some ways that you probably have, not to mention it makes you, you guys have a little click, right? Like those of you who have went through the Ironman,
Yeah.
who have signed up, trained for it, and went through it, you're in your own club. It's, I'm sure, no, not like people with 26.2 or 13.1 stickers, because you guys are on a different playing field, but you've got this club, right? And that's cool for networking in and of itself. It sets you apart. But to me, anytime that when I was talking to a client and I was like, oh yeah, to talk to this guy. And I was like, even if it's not a good fit, like he's an Ironman, but it just comes up to me. And I don't even know if you realize that it puts you in a different place. It shows like commitment and discipline and a lot of other things. So I'm sure there are things that you are naturally applying, whether you've sat down and reflected like, oh, these are the exact things.
Yeah, it goes one of two ways. That's in that same vein. Either people are like, oh, I connect with this guy because I've had a shared experience, or they're like, screw that guy because I've only done a 5K.
Because he's freaking crazy, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. I may drop it every now and again, but not to brag, just to see if there's some shared, even if somebody had like an uncle or something that did an Ironman, like they relate to that because especially if they're close with that person, that's always cool to relate at any level, because it is it's almost like someone who's on a deep spiritual journey. It's hard to explain to someone that's not been down that journey, or somebody that's had an exit from a business. It's hard for that person to live into that conversation if they too haven't had a shared experience. Just like it's hard for a mom or a dad to relate at a deep level with somebody who's not a parent if they're talking about kids, right?
Yeah.
So early on, I think I probably bragged about it too much because I thought I was so excited that I got through that, and it was such a big challenge. And now I've toned it down to someone wants to ask about it, like I'm super passionate to share, because my hope is they can influence somebody to do something like that. Mm-hmm. And I think that too, like I've grown to respect people that their big physical and emotional purpose or challenge is a 5K. And they train to complete that 5K. I think that's so cool. I don't really think the distance matters, to be honest with you. I think it's to each their own. And I have a great degree of respect for people that pursue the challenges that are hard for them, that really give them the greatest amount of fulfillment. I think the Ironman stuff, that's the point. Because there's always somebody that's doing a longer race.
Yeah, that's true. But I love, what's the saying? It's like anybody who's doing as much or more than you is never going to put you down for what you've done. So if anybody's ever like hating on that, it's because they're like, I would never try. They think that they would never be willing to do something like that. So they are the ones more like to knock it. Whereas anybody playing in the same arena or a bigger arena than you, they're always going to be like, yeah, dude, good for doing that.
So true.
Those are the people that I want to have the conversations with.
Same here.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything else? I got to reverse the question. What's been the last few years? What's been the thing that's like really got you? You started your business, but personally, has there been a big thing that like you've gone on a mission to accomplish?
Yeah. So, and this one's actually, it's been a little isolating too. So the Ironman, when I talk about it, people feel judged, which is interesting. So yes, we decided to change our life massively. So going from living in like a high-end neighborhood and private school and country club and, a different type of life, constantly traveling every month, like out of the country and all of this stuff. We took all of that and I'd say 90% of that away and said, what matters about life? And so we bought this farm 3.5 years ago, and we kept it a secret to everyone that we were considering making this our permanent home. We told everybody retirement home because we weren't sure. But as we built the house and started pouring into the land and bringing our son out here and seeing the way that our family interacted with it, spending more time with my parents, we were like, oh, shoot, we're about to do something major that's going to take everyone from our old life, the last 20 years that we spent in the city. We are about to alienate ourselves from anybody who's not real. And it has been a major pruning process, because not only did we go from 6,000 square feet to 3,500 and a house in a suburb on a lake to 140 acres of wild land out here and rattlesnakes and like it's bald eagles, and it's a whole different playing field. This private school to this public school where people are unkind to my son, not overly welcoming. It's just been this major juxtaposition. I've sold a lot of Louis Vuitton that I just don't need out here. I'm giving up my BMW and I need a knobbier SUV because I'm driving through a creek. We've changed our eating habits. We've changed the way we interact in our marriage. I would have said before we put our marriage first. Now we are forced to. We're out here in the middle of nowhere and we both work from home. We both started our own businesses in the last year. So by changing all of this, it's changed so much about me. And because of that, it's drawn some people in. It's pushed some people away. I'm still a magnet. Like I have a very strong personality. So I've always been this way, but now it's for a new, different reason. And it's been really interesting to watch the impact on me, my spirituality, my health. I mean, you saw me a few months ago. I look very different. Like a lot of things have changed. And it's been beautiful, but it's also been really, when I say pruning, sometimes pruning is hard.
Yeah, gosh.
My friendships, my relationships, my reputation. I was that country club gal out on the golf course and having champagne. Well, I pretty much gave up drinking. I'll have a cocktail every great once in a while, maybe once a month. There's just a lot that's changed. So that's been my pivotal moment. I've had a lot of those over the years, but this has been my biggest one.
Well, I think I'm personally inspired by what you all have done, and I've seen the change, and it's pretty awesome. I think very few people, I mean, when I say inspired, it means so many people talk about who they are and what they're doing, and they just talk, right? They almost talk their way into believing that they're really the best version of themselves. They're living out their best self. They're doing the best for their family. But a lot of it is just lip movement. You guys didn't do any lip movement. Matter of fact, you didn't tell anybody. You just took action. I think that's so cool. So few people take action, or they don't take enough action really in the direction. And then what does that turn to? Regret, right? Then we look back on our life and we're like, oh man, I just should have done that, right? I think that's really awesome what you guys have done. Kudos.
Thank you. Yeah. Anytime I have a conversation and I can tell it's rubbing someone, I'm always like, you should figure out what the root of that is. If I'm rubbing you the wrong way, if you feel judged by my sourdough or like whatever it is, or the fact that I wanted my son to live closer to his grandparents because that matters more than the opportunities that I was giving him in the city. If that's rubbing you wrong, I recommend you talk to your therapist about that.
Yeah.
It's not a me problem. You know what I mean? Sort that through and figure out where the root of that is. And the real ones will go the distance, right?
Yeah.
Like the real ones are like, yeah, that's freaking weird, but can I come out and play? I don't know what you guys are up to, but can we come see? So that's been really cool.
Yeah, I still want to get out there and ride the side by side and do all the awesome things that you guys do now.
You need to. And we've actually, tonight, we've got the guy who's going to be building our pool, and our pool house is coming tonight. So we're finally moving somewhere. It's really hard to get people to build out here since we are literally in the middle of nowhere. But coming out tonight, that project's getting ready to start, and that's really exciting. So we'll have a little extra space, because when we built this house, we were like, oh, togetherness. Like I grew up in a little bitty home. My husband grew up in a little bitty home. Like this is what's good for family. It's intense, especially when all three of us are introverts. We bring other people in the house and we're like, I can hear them. They can hear me. It's so weird.
The summer of 2000, we're at the pool.
It's on. Yes, it is. And the lake's coming up. We've got some rain that's been happening. So tell the folks where they can find you or how they can connect with you.
Yeah, LinkedIn, George Zimny. I think you got my name. And I'd love to, I'll accept your invite. Just drop a note that you met me on Don't Waste the Chaos with Kerri Roberts. And then we have a live chatbot on our website. It's ProducifyX.com. And I think Kerri's going to share it in the notes on the podcast here. But if you go to the chatbot and you type anything in, that actually comes to my cell phone for the present time. Someday, maybe we have somebody else that answers those messages. But for today, it's really important to myself and my business partner, Ryan, and our growing team. By the way, Kerri, we just added our first team member.
I want to hear more about that soon.
Very exciting. And I actually have interviews with 2 business development professionals as well. So the team is growing. But Yeah, you can also through the website, email, I mean, whatever. It's all obvious right there. But I'd love to meet you, even if it's networking. I have no idea where a conversation goes, but if your values aligned and you're doing cool things, then it'd be great to meet you.
Yeah, so I will link George's LinkedIn profile. I'll link their website. So all of that will be in the show notes. And I have an extreme urge to hop on your chatbot the next time I think of that and send you some nonsense. Can you see who it's coming from?
You know what? You have to tell me who you are. Well, you could literally, mess with me a little bit. If too many people mess with me, it's a good sign, Kerri. That means people are engaging in this.
That's right. And your website data will look good too, because you'll have visits. Just to make sure you chat with them long enough to where it's not kicking them off soon. Exactly. Okay. Anything else you would add before we wrap up?
No, I think you're awesome. I think your audience is awesome. I think what you're doing here, again, you could say that you're doing a lot of great stuff. You're starting a great business. You're bringing value to clients, but you're a doer. You're somebody of action. And so this is my first podcast as a guest. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah.
And hopefully your audience took one nugget, something away to take action that can help improve their life. And if they did, I feel like your mission is served in some capacity. I know my mission of the hour that we invested in this is definitely served in a huge capacity. So it's really been a pleasure. It's great to see you.
Good. Well, their ears had to be plugged if they didn't take anything away, because you brought a ton of value. And I would say in close, startups can be chaos. Prioritizing your health can feel like chaos. It just feels like one more thing you have to do in your 24 hours in a day. I hope today that George and I have inspired you to not waste the chaos, but to embrace it. Till next time.